Next up, we have Carol Valentine from ADEPT Live Labs, Commissioning Board Member.
Right, thank you John for the introduction. So I'm Carol Valentine from Kent County Council, but I'm here representing the ADEPT Live Labs 2 Commissioning Board. And I'm going to talk about something very different today in terms of transport. So there's been lots about EV, lots about cars, but what I'm talking about today is decarbonising local roads. So just in terms of the context, so ADEPT are an organisation that works with directors of education, of environment and planning and so on across the UK. And ADEPT has been working with the Department for Transport to get funding to decarbonise local roads. Now, we know how important reducing emissions are because we've heard all about that today and we recognise that. But what you may not realise is that actually maintaining our highways actually has produced lots and lots of emissions. So that's what I'm going to talk about, the programme, how it's been funded, and indeed a little bit about the projects that are involved. So, the ADEPT programme is a £30 million programme for the Department for Transport. This is our shared mission. Because of the time, I'm not going to read it all out, but the key points to take away from there is we're looking for the uptake of zero carbon techniques, solutions and materials when we're repairing roads across the UK. So just to get you a sense of the challenge that we face here, we've got, of our road network, 97% of our road asset is managed by your local highway authority. So I work for Kent County Council. We manage something in the region of 6,000 kilometres of highway across our network. So 97% of our UK road asset is managed by local authorities. So there's an estimated spend of about 4 billion per year, and that's public and private money. And the estimate, although it's not, we haven't got an exact figure, is about 1.5 million tonnes of CO2 emitted in the maintenance repair of the highways. There's over 200 plus UK highway authorities. And there's a recognition by our leaders and by our chief executives that there is a climate emergency that's been declared. So there's a will within local authorities to contribute, or certainly to lessen, to decarbonise in lots of areas, and roads are just one of them. So what's our ethos? I think we've heard people talk this morning about that measuring carbon, the problems with carbon, measuring, knowing what's actually the problem is. So we've got a laser sharp focus in this programme to make sure we understand what's actually happening with our roads. How can we make sure that we even understand where the carbon is? I'm just picking up on the point I think that's been made by Simon and by others, how important data is. So certainly for us in the highways, if I had to say what's my carbon baseline in Kent for our roads in Kent, I think I would struggle. But there are certainly now more and more carbon counters, ways that we can baseline what our carbon output is. So that sort of underpins the programme. We're very much working closely with that. Measuring and capturing and sharing learnings is really another focus for the programme. As I said, we've got over 200 local highway authorities. We've only got 7 highway authorities actually working on the programme. So we need to sort of get what we learn out into the sector very quickly. Accelerating behavioural change, and we've heard this morning about why don't people have electric cars, and there's a reason for that. I mean, I feel really bad because I bought my newish diesel a couple of years ago. I wish I'd had this conference before I bought that, but I will be changing. So how do we get people to change their behaviour? And that's a big part of the programme. So I want to run through some of these slides quite quickly because I've only got 10 minutes, probably now 7 minutes. But looking at this sort of diagram here, so we've got the carbon focus initiatives at the centre, and I'll tell you about the projects in a moment. Communicating what we're doing is really important, not just to our industry. I'm normally standing and talking to people in the audience who are from the highway sector. Today I'm talking to people from cross sectors, and we recognise how important it is to communicate what we're doing so we can do some of that joined up work. Just think about the last presentation we had. I think the one people you miss out with the highways, you're crossing our highways to put this stuff in. Let's be talking. So it's really important that we have that sort of conversation. We're monitoring and evaluating the programmes as we go through. Again, it's about data. So we've actually got on board with the programme a consultant who's doing that monitoring and evaluation to make sure that we're actually achieving our goals, and then the whole thing's underpinned by that behavioural change which we want to get into business as usual as we go along. So I'm not going to run through all of this because we don't have the time, but it's just really to show that we're taking a whole sort of theory of change, of recognising where we are in highways. We're very risk averse. I've worked in highways for over 15 years. We want to keep people safe on the roads, so we don't make massive changes because we're worried that people might get hurt. So, you know, we're going through a whole programme of change just to make sure that we get to these impacts, which are about reduced carbon, increasing resilience, reducing costs, as we've heard, that all of those things will help. So I'm going to have to skip over that one and this one. But Claire, you did mention this morning adopting system thinking, and that's what we're trying to do with this programme. So it's not just sitting at, you know, looking at our own industry, but, you know, the electricity that we use, the materials, public confidence, all of that's really important in us looking at the programme. So let me just tell you a little bit about what it is so you get a better idea. So we've got 4 themes for the programme. So green carbon laboratories, corridors and places, centres of excellence, and future lighting testbed. Now you're going to have to forgive me because I'm going to have to read to you what these are because I'm summarising huge, great big projects in just a couple of sentences. So if I just start with the Green Laboratory. So the Green Laboratory is involving South Gloucestershire and West Sussex County Councils. And essentially what they're doing is using new ways to manage grass verges. Now, when you drive along the road, you may notice there's often grass verges on the side. They're managed by the council. So we mow them, we do various things with them every year. And there's all the arisings that come from that, grass cuttings. But what do we do with those? Typically, they might just get dumped. We might have an arrangement with farmers or whatever. But what this project's trying to do is to use those grass cuttings to generate energy, producing a biomass. Then that biomass can then be collected and processed to generate new sources of heat, power, and alternative fuels. The project's called Greenprint, and that's what they're trying to do. Again, very different. That's something that we've particularly done before, working with industry to get there. The second area is the corridors and places, and that's Devon County Council, Somerset, Hampshire, we call them Wessex, and Liverpool City Council. And this is what they're doing, is creating these net zero corridors. So it's a real world roads around the networks. And along those networks, they're then using different methods, recycling of material, using new materials, just to see how can they do that to reduce the carbon output on those sections of road. And what's been chosen for those highways are bits that are typical that you might see in other parts of the UK. So if they work in these areas, then potentially they can work across the county, across the country, and they can be scaled up. The other section, so I'm going sort of clockwise, is the East Riding of Yorkshire, Decarbonising, is the future lighting testbed. Now, there are hundreds of thousands of street lights across the UK. And within the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years, many of them have moved to LED. So moving to LED has saved carbon outputs, and that's actually saved us millions of pounds of just energy cost. So again, the question was, well, what do we do next? We've gone to LED. What do we do next that's going to reduce carbon? And the best way to reduce carbon for streetlights is to turn them off. Because if they're not on, they're not using any sort of energy. But of course, if I was just come back from Portugal for the weekend, and I was telling my sister about this presentation and about what they're doing in East Riding of Yorkshire. And she goes, oh, well, I hate it when I drive down a dark road. I don't feel safe, etc. So when we make changes, people do sometimes feel a bit uncomfortable. But what this project is trying to do, and doing very well, is rationalising street lighting, using new street lighting, different signs and lines, using solar road studs, a whole range of activity in street furniture, so when the lights get turned off, people can actually still see where they're going. And interestingly, most of you will notice that street lights go over the road; they don't go over the pavement. And with our modern cars and our electric cars, usually once you've got your lights on, you're absolutely fine. So it's really about the pedestrian as well as about the road user. So that's a really exciting piece of work being done by East Riding of Yorkshire. And then the last one is the Centres of Excellence. And this is Transport for West Midlands and North Lanarkshire Council. And what they're doing is they're working to look at the different materials that we use when we're repairing and maintaining roads. So again, the project provides access to these test beds in 2 geographical locations where they can demonstrate and showcase materials and then scale those ideas up. And it's all about decarbonising materials that we use so that we can reduce that impact on the environment. So we'll be looking at your recycled materials, incubator projects and so on. So all of these will have an impact on reducing carbon. So that's a really, really quick canter through. I'll tell you where you can get more information on this in a moment. So sharing the findings, I won't say too much about this particular slide, but we have got lots of detail on our website. Website detail is at the bottom, so please feel free to have a look at that. So in terms of learning from the carbon baselines, any project that you do, there's always going to be problems. And somebody said something about funding, and we know that I think it might have been in the NHS, and certainly within local highway authorities, it's not as easy to get money in as you might think it is. But once we've got the money in, working with partners has presented some challenges. Scottish versus UK energy emissions factors are a little bit different. How do we measure that? But we're learning from all of those, and we're putting those all into reports. And what we're doing is we're making sure that we're getting that information out as soon as we can. We're not waiting for the end of a 3-year programme to get the findings out of what's coming out of the projects. Talked about behavioural change, and again, just going back to what we were saying about with the cars, how do we get people to change their behaviours? And we've the Live Labs commissioning board, of which I'm a member, and that's my speaking to you today, have commissioned BIT as a behavioural change professional consultants to have a look at the programme. So what's stopping people from changing? And it's not just individual. As drivers, we all have to change individually, but it's also the industry. We work a lot in highways with private contractors, with people that use the roads, and we've got to get them to change their behaviour and to understand why they need to make the change, what are the barriers to change, what's stopping people from using cold materials rather than hot materials, for example, to repair roads. So all of these things we're looking at as a part of the change programme for this project. Just because of time, I'm going to move on. So what we're doing in terms of the programmes, I'm understanding that I'm not speaking to my normal highways colleagues, but there's a lot of this information on our website. So we've got all the blogs and insights from the various programmes. So what the project managers are doing and project leads is they're reporting on what's coming out of the programme. We're taking industry events, things like today. We're trying to make sure as a commissioning board and as ADEPT that we're getting out beyond our usual audiences. We're going across the 4 nations. This is a UK programme to make sure that we can get the messages out. We're looking at that change in behaviours, how are things starting to change, and I've talked about the monitoring and evaluation. So we've got a company that are doing that, as I've said, to make sure that we're hitting our actual targets. So on the 23rd of April, we had a House of Commons event with the Minister who came along, and Lillian Greenwood, and she came along and it was a very good event because we had people from across the sectors, not just highways, and it was helping us to get to where we can get the message out about what we're doing. And that QR code there will take you to the pledge. And the pledge was just to say, for the people that were there and anyone that's interested, that we want to collectively champion the principles of Live Labs 2, which is about decarbonising local roads, and then lay the groundwork for the continued evolution of sustainable highways and infrastructure. So, how can you get involved? Go to our website and have a look, something different that you may not have seen before. Read the news and the blogs. Just yesterday, as I was waiting at the airport, because I just came back from Lisbon, I was reading what East Yorkshire Riding have done. They've literally just gone live on Friday with the work that they're doing of turning off the street lights in particular areas, and you can see what they've done, and it's absolutely brilliant, the work. We're happy, if any of you are here and you want to learn a bit more, you've got your own communities, your own industries, you'd like someone to come along to talk, then certainly myself, one of the commissioning board, or one of the programme managers would be happy to come along. Sign the pledge if you've got that up, and then you can ask us any questions. So hopefully I'm within my 10 minutes. Thank you very much.